The Secrets of Star Wars is brought to you by the Starquest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give.
Hi, this is Ashley Eckstein, the voice of Ahsoka Tano from Star Wars, and you're listening to the Secrets of Star Wars podcast. May the Force be with you.
Listening to the Secrets of Star Wars episode 68, you are.
Hello there.
It's a power that Jedi have that lets them control people and make things float.
Impressive. Every word in that sentence was wrong.
Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi. You're my only hope.
This station is now the ultimate power in the universe.
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
It's against my programming to impersonate a deity.
That's not how the Force works.
Force is with me, and I am with the Force, and I fear nothing.
Remember, the Force will be with you, always.
I was going to do that in a Yoda voice, but I am terrible at impressions. But hey, everybody, I am Father Andrew Kinstetter, a.k.a. Father Fett, and you're listening to The Secrets of Star Wars, where we talk about everything connected to that galaxy far, far away, including all the deeper themes and meanings. If you hadn't guessed already, today we are continuing our series of character-devoted episodes, and we are taking a look at the wisest, one of the wisest, arguably the wisest Jedi Master of all time, Yoda himself. So joining me tonight on the panel are Angela Cialana.
Hello, everyone.
Hello. And second, we have Thomas Sanjurjo this evening.
Hello, hello.
So that is it for us this evening, and so we are going to be diving into one of the coolest Jedi of all time, Yoda. So we're going to not waste any time and kind of jump into that. So just a brief overview of Yoda's character. This is coming from StarWars.com, the data bank. He is the Grand Master of the Jedi Council. Yoda has trained Jedi for over 800 years. He is wise and powerful in the ways of the Force, though his small size causes many to underestimate him. Yoda prefers meditation and reflection, spending much time pondering the mysteries of the Force. In his long lifetime, he has witnessed the decay of the Galactic Republic and saw the Jedi Order transform from peacekeepers to battlefield commanders in the Clone Wars. When he must, Yoda wields his lightsaber and becomes a whirling warrior of great speed and agility. A stern instructor, Yoda nonetheless has a mischievous sense of humor. With the rise of the Galactic Empire, Yoda fled into exile and awaited the arrival of a new Jedi student to rekindle a new hope in the galaxy. So, first of all, of course, what's your favorite thing about Yoda? What's your general feelings towards the character?
I love Yoda backpack. That's probably my favorite Yoda thing is, Luke carrying him around on his back and doing the flips and stuff with him. If anyone has not watched the lip sync songs featuring Yoda, it must be done. You have to go search this up. It's Seagulls Stopping Now. That's start there. Dive deep because it's truly fantastic.
True, this is. I think probably one of the best things about Yoda is kind of like what you referenced without really saying it, which is he's so approachable. Mm-hmm. Like, I think everybody likes Yoda. I don't know if I've ever met somebody, even like casual Star Wars fans who know next to nothing about, who has this power or whatever, but just know, like you say, Yoda, and people light up kind of, he is so fun because he's small and green and strange looking, and he speaks in this unique speech pattern.
Yes.
But I think also just him having that role of, going back to George Lucas and Joseph Campbell's relationship, and Joseph Campbell writing, Hero of a Thousand Faces, about how all of these myths and legends and stories throughout history, the humankind have like similar roles and different story arcs and different things that have this function. And so Yoda is sort of the wise sage, right, of the hero's journey. And so to have this character who I think is, you're supposed to like them, you're supposed to really feel like they're almost like a family member or something, like somebody who can really give you that word that you need, even if it's a little bit, difficult to hear. So I think just George Lucas creating this character is just, he was so brilliant, just to be able to, I mean, he's one of the most loved characters of all time, right?
I want to come back to that, in fact, because I had done a little bit of just research into the hero with 1,000 faces. And I mean, that's truly, really some cool stuff there. So before we get to that, though, I just wanted to share that initially I did not like Yoda. And I need to like back up and explain this, because that sounds terrible.
Oh no.
So for context,
but wait, you started, I was going to say, you started at a different point in the series than a lot of us did.
Correct.
That's true.
So
yeah.
I mean, so the context here is I was a kid and Dad was watching The Empire Strikes Back on TV. And for some reason I found Yoda, I mean, his eccentric look and his the way he talked and the way he acted as a kid, for some reason that just really kind of scared me in some way, and I'm not entirely sure why.
It's the teeth, man. He's got those pointy, weird, jaggedy teeth in the original series.
He's kind of crazy eyes too.
Yeah, he's like hitting R2-D2 with his little stick and causing a ruckus, and of course now I can totally appreciate that and love it. And but initially that actually sort of I didn't jump into Star Wars because of that. It wasn't until episode 2 hit theaters that really I really got into it. And of course, with episode 2, we get to see this really awesome Yoda who's wise. He's teaching younglings, but then he also fights Dooku and not even has to use a lightsaber to capture the Force lightning and, redirect it. So that was the Yoda that I really liked. And then by that point, then I was okay with episode 5 Yoda. So yeah, I do really like his character. And of course, nowadays, especially with Grogu on The Mandalorian, just the whole Yoda species has gotten quite a bit of spotlight. And even though we know hardly nothing about the species, there's definitely a generated interest in the pop culture at large of Yoda and Grogu, affectionately called Baby Yoda. So I did want to go back to, Angela, what you were talking about in the hero's journey, because I did find that just really interesting as I was kind of looking it up. And a brief little summary of what the hero's journey is, according to Joseph Campbell, from his book, The Hero with 1,000 Faces, goes somewhat like this. The hero of the story is discovered in the ordinary world before a call to adventure. The hero refuses the call, but meets a mentor who gives the hero the strength to cross the first threshold. The hero is then tested by enemies and obstacles of increasing magnitude until a supreme ordeal followed by a reward. There is then a return to the ordinary world, but with an elixir, something to make the ordinary world a better place. So Yoda fits that role of mentor, in particularly if we're going to kind of look at Luke Skywalker's journey. And then to go into that just a little bit more, here's another quote from Campbell that was just really kind of on the nose almost. He is describing the mentor, and he says that a mentor may often be some little fellow of the wood, some wizard, hermit, shepherd, or smith who appears to supply the amulets and advice that the hero will require. So I thought that, I mean, Yoda totally fits that. Like the some little fellow of the wood is totally Yoda. Once he reveals himself to be the Jedi Master. And so he is that quintessential mentor. He's not. Yep.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say he's not like, he's a hard mentor though. I mean, and like Thomas, you mentioned earlier, like with him riding on Luke's back, and I mean, he's not soft by any means in his advice. he's got some very pointed comments and discussion, which I've gathered a few of my favorites, and we'll talk more about them later and kind of what we can learn from Yoda. But I mean, he's not a softie by any means.
He's a good traditional Japanese mentor, which is, I think,
exactly.
It's kind of back to that Akira Kurosawa sort of inspiration for Star Wars, where he wants Luke to learn, but he's willing to let Luke learn on his own. Right? He tells him about the dark place in their training, but then he just lets him wander in and doesn't prepare him for what he's going to see at all. Some of it because he can't tell what Luke's going to see, but then the rest of it because Luke needs to just go in there and learn on his own. And so there's that opening of just letting the disciple question and explore and learn themselves, and being there to sound off of afterwards, which is really good. Allowing them to fail and then showing the way after they've failed so that they can learn better.
Yeah, it's very, I think, intentional that we learn a lot about the Force through Yoda. Yoda is also kind of like this Buddhist Zen master, in his character as well. There's a lot of the Force teachings, the Jedi teachings are kind of influenced by Buddhist thought as well. And one of the interesting things that I learned recently when I was learning more about Yoda is that his name is very similar to a Pali word. Pali is the sacred language of a certain kind of school of Buddhism. And the word is Yoda. It's spelled Yodha, but it's pronounced the same. And it means soldier. So I saw that there was kind of a connection between what you're saying, Thomas, that Zen master, but also the samurai film as well, that, Yoda is kind of this spiritual master, but he's sort of like a samurai master too. And he is, I mean, as we're talking about this, he's really like that compilation of all the great things that make up that mentor character, that teacher character that we love.
Well, and like I'm thinking again back to the prequels, he only fights when it's absolutely necessary. He definitely prefers the peacekeeper kind of role and the meditation and the mystical side of the Force. But he is not afraid to pull out his lightsaber when needed and fight.
But then once the lightsaber comes out, that's it. It's the serious, no nonsense, very focused. All of the jovial part of him is gone. And while he's a crazy fighter, he's very intent on finishing that battle. And I love that aspect because that really pulls in. There's stories about Miyamoto Musashi, who's the greatest sword fighter of all time. He wrote this book called The Book of Five Rings. It's a beautiful treatise on combat, and throughout the book you get this sense that he's just this guy, like he's just like he's a regular guy, and he was so good at sword fighting because he put everything else aside during the fight, and the fight was all about completing the fight. And so the way he talks about things is ridiculous. Like, if you're faced with multiple opponents, first strike one down and then strike another down. And like, that's his advice for multiple opponents, right? It's just focus on one, strike him down, and then go for the next one. Don't worry about the multiples, just take one out and then go for the next one. And so that's kind of his mentality of fighting. But then when you read the rest of the book, like, it's just relaxed and kind of, like you're sitting around a fire and just having this campfire side chat with this guy who's just regular, but he's the best sword fighter in history. And so you get that sense with Yoda where he's relaxed, completely relaxed where he is. And then when the moment calls for it, he becomes that thing that he needs to be. And 800 years worth of training would probably do that to you, right?
Yeah, I think actually that's one of the key qualities of Yoda is that he focuses on the present. And that's a strong central tenet of his teachings to Luke, is to And also, I think a little bit to Anakin as well, but to really focus on the present and the now, and what's in front of you, and not get caught up in anything else, which is very Buddhist. But I think it's also very Christian too. Not that we ignored the future or the past, but that we have a vocation, and it's in the present, and God is always in the eternal now, right? Like always existing outside of time. So yeah, I think that that's actually one of my favorite things about Yoda is that teaching that he has, that he really teaches Luke, because of course we know Luke is like staring off into the sunset all the time and wanting adventure, and that's one of the things that Yoda really gets at him, hits him on the nose with his cane, his little stick, about a lot, is I think a good lesson for me, but for all of us too.
One of the other things that I found that I really appreciated about his qualities is just his moral uprightness. And for some reason, I keep thinking back to episode 2 with his fight with Dooku, and what allows Dooku to escape is that, Dooku uses the Force to try to knock that, I don't even know what it is, but that pillar onto Anakin and Obi-Wan. And Yoda could end the fight with Dooku. He could continue to fight. He could capture Dooku, but he would lose Anakin and Obi-Wan to the pillar, and they would be killed. And in the moment, he of course changes tactics and rescues Obi-Wan and Anakin, and Dooku is able to escape until Revenge of the Sith. But that whole idea that, yeah, again, he's like living in the now, and he's choosing to do what is morally upright in the moment, and not, the ends don't justify the means for him. So he's not going to do something and allow an evil to happen just to capture Dooku and try to stop the war. But he's got that moral uprightness of character, which again goes back to just him being the wise mentor, the one that you trust, because that he's got the good in mind in what he's doing, even if he doesn't foresee the future per se. The future is always in motion, as he says, but he's living in the now for sure.
Yeah, I think I was curious what you guys would say about like sort of his weaknesses as well, because I don't know if it's okay to go there now or not, but
it's excellent to go there now. That's the best. That's the best part of talking about this character, because he is so revered. I think it's good to kind of look at what was flawed about him,
right,
in the story that was portrayed.
Yeah, I mean, well, obviously with the Clone Wars, for 800 years, you think, oh, how could he not have seen what was happening to the Jedi Order in turning into basically, warmongers and soldiers of the Republic, and not living the Jedi way in many ways. I think we did see a little bit more of that tension and that questioning in the Clone Wars and some of the other source material, but at the same time, it's like, how did this happen to Yoda? Because he's supposed to be beyond, in a way, he's presented to us in such a way that he's beyond this oversight, which we see as we're watching the movies, and even, Anakin comes to see, and we know that, that Ahsoka also comes to see, and some of the others, in the Jedi Order. So why did Yoda not speak up, or why did he not take a stand against, Chancellor Palpatine?
I would love to see that fleshed out in his character in the High Republic information that's coming up, because there has to be a point at which he was kind of pushed aside as the old man, right? And that's where I think really he's doing the best he can with the position he's been given, during the rise of the Clone Wars. He's training the kids, right? And that's kind of one of those things that you would think the great master of the Jedi wouldn't be stuck training the kids. So I think there's a huge story there. And I really do appreciate that view of it, because you have to look at this figure. I mean, just going back to the moment you talked about where he's doing the moral good, Father, when you were saying that he's doing the moral good, how much evil could have been avoided if he had stopped Dooku at that moment. And if he had any view into the future, knowing that Anakin would die at that point before becoming what he became, there's, all around, the net positive of capturing Dooku was greater than allowing the two of them to die, unless you go through this, kind of assumption about what the Jedi are.
Wouldn't you sort of assume, though, watching episode 1, that Yoda was already aware that there was going to be problems with Anakin?
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean,
he knew.
Right. So, I mean, just because you see potential challenges and the potential for Anakin to go to the dark side, and I guess that goes back again to him being moral in the moment. I mean, he chooses to try to, hopefully guide him towards the light and keep him there, rather than, well, just don't train him at all and then avoid all the potential problems in the future.
Well, but he did recommend that. His initial recommendation for Anakin was that he was not going to be trainable. And so this is where you come back to, I think the biggest flaw with this character is that he is too much of a pacifist. And he waits too long to act. And you get that same kind of tendency to him. I mean, like, when Luke finds him again, he's removed himself from everything. And he's hiding on this planet out in the middle of nowhere, right? And it's only because Obi-Wan tells Luke to go find him that he's brought back into everything that's happening. And even when that happens, he says, nope, he's too old. I'm not going to. He's like, he continues to refuse to get involved. And so I really feel like there's a lot more of a story there that needs to be kind of unfolded.
Yeah, it is interesting that you bring up that Yoda immediately rejects Luke. He doesn't sit and think like, I wonder, like we don't see this moment of like Yoda really, at least initially, really considering the idea of, training this Anakin Skywalker's son. I think you're onto something with that idea of him being too pacifistic. Yeah, and it would be very interesting to see in the new stories that we're getting about involving his earlier life, if something happened to him, or if that was maybe part of his training, because it's definitely not. I don't think it's part of his species, because we've seen Grogu, and we've seen how Grogu has acted at a relatively young age and has not been pacifistic.
Yep. I will point out, from what I've read so far of the High Republic, he is on the council still, and the one book, I think he was taking a sabbatical from being on the council.
Interesting.
So yeah. I guess read into that what you want, but I think one of them also mentioned that he is still, even at that point, kind of helping train the younglings. So I think that role is, maybe he's done that for a few
right.
millennia,
right?
And maybe something else to consider here too is that and I tend to agree with you guys on him maybe being a bit too pacifist, but also maybe just, I don't know if I want to call it pride, or maybe him feeling a lack of control, because if he trains younglings from an early age, he can kind of guide them and shape them in the right path, where Anakin was already older than that when he started his training, and then Luke was even older than Anakin when he started. And so perhaps there was even a little bit of, and also I think of now Ahsoka in The Mandalorian, of not wanting to take on Grogu because she thought that Grogu might go down the same path as Anakin. You know, maybe Yoda looks at Luke, and in fact, I think this is heavily inferred in that, you know, much fear and you know, in Luke, and potentially unwilling to try to take that on because of the potential for Luke to fall to the dark side as well.
Well, and I think that's one of the beautiful things about Star Wars is that for all the fact that everyone talks about how archetypal all the characters are, you know, the standard good, standard evil, every single character in Star Wars is flawed, right? And they're flawed in a very unique way that's causes the character to need to grow and continues to be, you know, it's all of us have those failures in ourselves that we constantly confront. No matter how much we try to get rid of them, they are things that are built into us that we will always struggle with, right? So, you know, there's the addictive natures, the your standard sins of pride and lust, envy, greed. We tend to attach to one of those out of all of them, and that tends to be the thing that we come back to over and over again. And you see that in Yoda. You see this kind of pacifist, this refusal to engage, where he would be helpful, beneficial, where it would be best for him to engage. In Luke, you see that constant looking to the future. In Kylo, you see that constant looking to the past, right? So, you know, all of the characters have these things that make them not perfect, which is great because it makes them real characters. It makes them characters that are real to follow. And that's, I think, you know, when you touch on Yoda, you kind of poke at a sacred cow when you start saying negative things about him. And it's not that I don't like him. And I love the character. I think the character is fantastic. And I think to compare to in a Kurosawa film, the Seven Samurai, which I think Yoda draws heavily from one of the characters in that, which is the ancient swordsman, the old swordsman who is fantastic swordsman, but he's kind of got this veteran status, and he's balding, and he's really, really good with a sword, but he's also like, you know, just tired of the world. And I kind of get that sense from Yoda. And again, that's my favorite character in that film, The Seven Samurai, is that grizzled veteran who's just, you know, world weary, but at the same time is engaging as much as he can, but really realizes it's not his world to fix anymore. It's kind of gone beyond him. And then the other thing that I think is really cool about Yoda is that it captures this essence of what an 800-year-old creature would be like, right? Like, you've seen so many people that you've gotten close to live their entire life, grow old, and die. And the world is just the world. There's nothing new under the sun, right? And it doesn't matter what sun you're under. There's not really anything new going on. It's kind of the same stuff over and over and over again.
Yeah. And since we're talking about his character development, I think another point as I was reflecting on his character development is in the Clone Wars, in this really interesting story arc where he is sort of like caught up in this mystical world of the Force, and he's being taught by these beings in the Force about the living force and the cosmic force and immortality and things like that. And he goes through tests in this, not to give away everything. It's really great. It's worth watching if you haven't yet. But I think one of the interesting things is that he still has more to learn, even at that point in his life, from the Force and about the Force. And in particular, one of the things is that he really he has to learn how to deal with his shadow self. There's like this other Yoda, like evil Yoda or whatever, that kind of appears, and he has to like wrestle with his dark side. And before he realizes that he has to actually just accept that he has those tendencies, that is all part of him. And then once he does that, he accepts that, and that he doesn't fight it. That's when he has mastery over himself more. So it's like all these great things about about how Yoda still has more to learn, even as old as he is, like you're saying, that I think is just so fascinating about him, even as he is, kind of like our mentor, as we're going through the movies with the different characters.
And I think that is also why it makes him such a good mentor character, is that, I mean, because he knows, or because he still has more to learn, even at 800, 900 years old, he's not filled with pride and says that he knows everything and comes off that way. And sure, I think at the end of his life, he still has to kind of learn to let go and to trust Luke, and, and kind of, he has to kind of grapple with some of that. But that's the mark of any good teacher. One of the things that I mean, I even try to do here is just like, I'm okay with telling people I don't know the answer, and I know how to find out. I will look it up for you. I know who to ask, but I, as a pastor, I'm not presenting myself as all powerful and all knowing. That's for God, not for me. But it is our role to be able to teach those, younger than us, those less experienced, but also recognize that we ourselves are also on that continual journey of knowledge and self-knowledge and, growth in virtue and all of that. So Yoda definitely, kind of embodies that aspect of it as well. Should we transfer to more of lessons that we've learned then from this great mentor? I've got a number of quotes that I pulled from various sources that I just kind of wanted to throw out there and talk about.
As you're doing that, I wonder if one of my least favorite Yoda quotes, which is often quoted, is going to be among them.
Now I've got to analyze my list.
Exceptionally likely, because I think I know the one you're going for.
Well, then I'm going to start where you probably aren't as familiar. One thing that he says to Master Windu in Revenge of the Sith, and I don't know if this is in the movie or not, but it's in the book because I looked it up. But he says, quote, "Named must your fear be, before banish it you can." So the idea that, our the fears that we experience, or the uncertainties that we experience in life, in order to banish those from our hearts, to basically acknowledge it, is you have to identify it and you have to name it, and then you can deal with it appropriately. If you're just dealing with uncertainty, you're never going to get at the root of what's going on. And as I came across that one today, it just struck a chord, because that's very Catholic in how, our approach to, my approach to helping people kind of work through sin and temptation is, to acknowledge it, to identify it, and then identify the root behind it. And then once you are able to do that, whether it's a broken self-image or, bullying, or, a lack of a good father figure or mother figure, once you can identify and name that root, then you can appropriately engage in the healing process and banish, so to speak, the consequence and the result of that.
It's a great one.
I'll throw it to you guys. I don't know if you guys have any quotes or anything, any lessons that you've learned. Otherwise, I can keep going. But I don't know what you guys had for insights learned.
One of his most quoted, maybe possibly his most quoted, is "Do or do not, there is no try."
Is that the one that you don't like?
No, that's not the one that I don't like, actually. I like that one because it is true that we can try things. Like, in other words, maybe we set out to do something and we don't actually accomplish it. But at the same time, I think there's a lot of wisdom in that saying, because we often use the fear of failure as an excuse to not do something. And that, I think that was the point that Yoda was trying to make, is either you set out to do something or you don't. And so I think that's a great lesson for kids as well. He has a lot of good lessons for kids, and I think that was intentional by George Lucas. I think about, how George wanted to give Star Wars to kids in a way, and I often wonder how was he devising these lessons in his mind as he was writing the script, but yeah, do or do not, there is no try. And then also size matters not is probably like maybe number 2, or maybe they're both, sort of quoted the same number of times. But size matters not is also another great lesson for kids because it's very empowering for them. They see this little guy who is short and people don't think much of him initially. And then, wow, you follow him through the Star Wars movies as they were released. Obviously, you're just talking, Father, about episode 2, and it's like, whoa, where did this guy come from? So yeah, those are 2 quotes that I think are great for kids. And I'll throw it to you guys for some more
before Thomas jumps in. I just wanted to follow up on the size matters not. What I love about that is that it does teach, to not be judgmental towards other people. And that's definitely a firmly rooted Catholic, and not just Catholic, but in general, it's kind of just the, natural law almost, that every single human person has dignity. And we would say, is made in the image and likeness of God. And, just because someone doesn't appear to be better than other people or looks, disheveled or whatever, appearances ultimately mean nothing when you're looking at the heart. And I really appreciated that. And Yoda, he kind of looks like this weird, odd little alien when I first saw him, and he scared me. And in my childhood, I probably judged him, but learn not
an
to.
Ancient little man, like a tiny little old man with his little cane, but he's like the greatest warrior in history. Right?
Yeah.
No, I want to tag up on that one about the do or do not, because that whole scene is something that really impacted me as a child. Because, what he's saying there is not that you can't try something, but that if you are going to try something, throw yourself into it. Do it. And if you fail, fine, you fail, but you threw yourself into it. And that's the marker of success, is whether or not you went for it. Like if you really embraced what you were doing and just gave it your all. And that same scene is where he lifts the X-Wing up out of the swamp, and Luke turns around and looks at him and says, I don't believe it. And Yoda's response was, that is why you fail. And to me, that as a whole package, that is the best lesson that he teaches. It's you're not going to, it's not like it's an instant recipe for success. And that's not what Yoda's trying to say at all. What he's saying is either go for it and completely throw yourself into it and believe with all your heart that it's going to happen and just push for it, or don't, because there's no point in kind of like, maybe attempting it, putting your toe in the water and, because you're going to stop yourself. You're going to keep yourself from succeeding. And that to me is just like, it's such a powerful statement for kids to watch that and to see so, succinctly put together this package of what it looks like to believe in yourself and know that you can do these things that are impossible, that are beyond the imagination that you have at the moment, but that if you just go for it, you might be able to overcome that, that barrier. So I think that's probably my like favorite all-encompassing quote of his. But then I also like the one from him that he said that when he's talking about the younglings, and he says that truly wonderful the mind of a child is. That's one of my other favorites of his, where he's, it's where Obi-Wan's looking for a lost planet, and the child makes a reference to where the planet might be, and it's like it's the answer that they were looking for, and so often, with 8 kids, I've had that moment so often where, my kids will just say something, and it's like, well, why didn't I think of that? That's so obviously the answer. How did I not come up with that? And it's because I don't have that mind of a child that's just free to roam and wander and come up with these solutions that are completely out of the bounds of what I have experienced and eliminated from my life, right?
But also to be free to not, like, at that age, they're not trying to impress their friends. They're not trying, there's no peer pressure. Like that particular scene, he just states the obvious, like,
right.
You know, someone
Exactly.
erased it from the archives. And and Obi-Wan and Yoda may have already kind of wink knew, but or at least assumed maybe the answer, where Obi-Wan is like, oh yeah, that kind of makes sense.
Oh yeah.
You know, but he speaks without fear of saying the wrong answer.
Mm-hmm.
Which is really, empowering and how we should act. So the next one that I have is another one from episode 3. And again, this is at least pulling from the novel. I didn't actually go look these up on the movie. But Yoda, at one point, Anakin goes to Yoda for advice regarding his visions regarding Padme potentially dying. And so Yoda gives him this advice. He says, "Speaking of you and your vision and your fear, we are. The shadow of greed, attachment is. What you fear to lose, train yourself to release. Let go of fear, and loss cannot harm you." And so Anakin, of course, takes this as, well, Yoda has never been in love and he doesn't understand what's going on, and I'm going to totally disregard everything that Yoda said because he's not actually going to be helpful, you know. But that's where Anakin's at that point in his life. But I just found it very pointed when he said the shadow of greed, attachment is. Or if we're attached, it's in the shadow of greed. And I really appreciate that, because that's kind of hitting at the heart of greed, is wanting to possess, wanting to hold on to things or people in this case. And, you know, and that's ultimately that, you know, he fears losing Padme in an unhealthy manner because he's wanting to possess rather than love, even though there is love involved, authentic love, I think, as well. But he's too caught up in wanting to kind of hold on yep. And so, of course, he is not able to hear this and respond in a healthy way. And ultimately, we kind of know where episode 3 ends up, and he inadvertently causes her to fulfill that prophecy of her dying because of his attachment and his greed. So I think the one, Angela, that you probably don't like. Let's see if I'm right this time. This is coming from episode 1.
Nope.
Oh, okay. I am just striking out here. You know, maybe
hear it now.
Maybe
I don't know what it is.
This is exciting though, because the ones that I figured you didn't.
Good. I'm glad I gave the teaser at the beginning.
So listeners, you can try to guess as we go along too. So in episode 1, he's talking about fear being the path of the dark side. And this is his pretty standard: fear leads to anger, anger leads to hate, hate leads to suffering, which is sort of just, it ties right in with the other quote that I had, that when you fear something, or you fear to lose something, you know, it can cause you to go down that road of anger and unhealthy anger, wrathful anger, not just righteous anger. And I try to make that distinction, especially when I'm in the confessional. A lot of people come and just confess anger. And I have to remind them that anger itself is just a human emotion. There's nothing inherently wrong with it. And even Jesus had righteous anger when he drove the money changers out of the temple. But it's where that takes you. If it takes you down the road of wrath, if you respond to it in that way of resentment and grudges and wishing ill and doing ill towards other people, that's where it becomes wrong. But having anger itself can actually prompt you to do what's right. So here, of course, Yoda is talking about that anger that leads to wrath, towards hating. And then, of course, that leads down the road to ultimate suffering, because this just leads to destruction.
I think one of the interesting things about if you are only in the movies of Star Wars, you get a very stilted view of the Force and of why would anybody embrace the dark side? Obviously, it's for power, but that's that's obviously evil also. And I think if you've ever played further, like into the games and read into some of the books, there's a beautiful litany of the Sith that I'm going to read it right now, because it's really fantastic, and it kind of gives you a view of like, why would you do this? if you didn't, if you knew it was going to be evil, why would you embrace the dark side? And this is more kind of where Anakin goes wrong. And it's the litany is, peace is a lie. There is only passion. Through passion, I gain strength. Through strength, I gain power. Through power, I gain victory. Through victory, my chains are broken. The Force shall set me free. And that's kind of that deeper understanding of where the Sith are coming from, as not that they're just plain evil, but that they feel that having been given this power, they are freed by it from the regular run-of-the-mill being stuck in their day-to-day life, right? They can overcome anything. They can overcome even death, and that's the enticement that Anakin gets, is that ability to overcome using the Force and to control the destiny of the person that he's with. And in that process, he loses everything. And I think that's one of the really, painfully beautiful things about the way that the dark side is handled in throughout the trilogies. And as you become more impassioned and as you become more free with the Force, you also lose control over everything that you are trying to control in your life. And that's so often a reflection of the way that our life can be. The more you try and make everything work exactly the way you want it to, it's the way you want it to and not the way that things are going to work. And so you can't be comfortable with things when they're not in that perfect order that you want.
I think that echoes back to even just why Yoda is such a great character, because he's not perfect. And even, that's why we love good stories and why we love Star Wars, is even the villains. Unless we're talking about Palpatine, which we already talked about, they're not evil, just to be evil, but there's always, that desire, and Anakin ultimately to win the Clone Wars and to save Padme and to do something ultimately good, but the fear distorts that, and it leads them down this road of wanting to control it and kind of getting them all caught up in that. And that's something that is just relatable to us as humans, because we all experience those same sorts of tensions and pulls in our own hearts, and we have to grapple with them just like these characters do. So Angela,
I want to know what Angela's. I want to know what Angela's quote is.
I don't think I actually have it on my list.
Okay, wow, that's very surprising, because I feel like I see this quote a lot. So it's from episode 5.
Okay.
And it's when Yoda is talking to Luke, and he's saying like, "Oh no, I'm ready," and Yoda gets his little stick and he kind of pokes at Luke and he says, "Luminous beings are we, not this crude matter." And I think a lot of people find that quote to be very inspiring, because I think the intention of the quote is to say, you think that you are just stuff, right? You're just flesh and bone, but there's more to you than that. And there's nothing wrong with that interpretation. In fact, that's a beautiful interpretation. But the reason why I don't like the quote is because we are not matter that is crude. I don't think that is a Christian idea. That, it's interesting too, because Christianity is so amazing. Like, we're coming up on Ash Wednesday as we're recording this. And so we're going to be talking about how we come from dust, which is crude matter, right? But at the same time, we have this idea that, Christ came and became incarnate, and that our bodies are not just stuff, just waste, and nothing important, but that we are even matter has been infused with this divine beauty, this divine blessing, this grace. And so that is one of the things that I think a lot of people, we all sort of have this part of our wounded nature. Human nature is we beat up on ourselves a lot, or we don't think that we're good enough. And I think we've been talking about that, throughout this conversation. And And a lot of that also goes with like our appearances as well, you know, how we view our bodies, how we treat our bodies. And I think that using that kind of language, like, oh, we're just crude matter, it feeds into that mentality potentially. And so that's one of the reasons that I don't like using that quote as an inspirational quote, because I think as Christians, we should not necessarily use that kind of language when we're talking about ourselves, that we should do better, you know, than that. So I don't know what you guys think about that.
I agree completely. That was not on my list, by the way, of quotes that I wanted to talk about. So I'm glad that you brought it up, because it really, I mean, we go back to the book of Genesis when God created the earth and the sky and the stars. Every single time he creates something, he declares it good. And then when he creates man and woman is when he declares them very good. And yeah, if you have a distorted view on that, then it totally distorts Jesus and the incarnation and what we're all about, and our, you know, the belief in the resurrection of the body. And, you know, we're not just souls that are trapped in this body that I just have to endure and then somehow be freed from at death, you know, but rather there's inherent goodness because God has created it and he wants it to be good. So I appreciated you bringing up that quote.
Well, I think there's plenty of places in Star Wars itself where this is discussed, because there's a lot of the cybernetics in Star Wars that are really central to the story, not just kind of an after effect of them being in the future, but, you know, Luke's loss of his hand, and when he's fighting Vader at the end and he cuts off that hand and sees that his father is very much like him, having lost that hand as well. And just Anakin's losing some of his Force abilities by being converted into this half man, half machine, right? And that breathing that he has that just gives him such a stage presence in the world. And Grievous, as another example, that is a creature that was kind of intentionally placed through this torture and put into this machine, and is a tortured soul stuck inside of a machine in the very real sense, right? It's a theme that comes up a lot in Star Wars, and it's interesting for it to be juxtaposed with this kind of concept of, oh, well, but, you know, you're just this crude, you're not just this crude stuff, you're this being that's separate from just that crude stuff. But the crude stuff is really important, even inside of the lore of Star Wars itself.
Yeah. And I think that really kind of reveals the Buddhist influence, which does have that concept, like avoiding suffering, that our body is sort of, like more of that dualistic idea of the body and the soul, rather than the unity that Christianity sees us to be. Which, you know, as we were talking about like anger and hate and suffering and that teaching of Yoda, I was thinking about in Romans, where Paul talks about how we even boast of our afflictions, because afflictions lead to endurance, and endurance proven character, and proven character leads to hope. And so, you know, not that suffering is evil, suffering is bad. We don't believe that God gives us suffering in that type of way, but that we can, through suffering, that we can achieve something greater with God's grace. So yeah, I think there's definitely, if you are a Christian and you're coming into Star Wars, it's good to be mindful of those differences and those influences at the same time, so that you can really kind of learn how to just like with anything, any media, you know, it's good to kind of like understand and be critical in a positive way, so that you can interact with whatever media it is, whatever story it is, as a Christian.
I just want to add to that St. John Paul II has an apostolic letter called Redemptive Suffering. or salvici doloris in Latin, you know, and he talks about that reality that suffering is a lack of a good that should be there. So it is an evil, but it's something that God allows in order to bring forth good from it. But also that in our suffering, we can be mystically united to Christ on the cross. And so that because Christ suffered and died for us, he was able to elevate suffering to be that act of redemption for the world. And so when we suffer, it's something that we can be united to Christ on the cross and participate and make that a prayer in itself and participate in Christ's redemptive act. So it's not something that is just empty and hollow and meaningless. It's not something God wills on us or causes, but it's something that he allows because it's a way for good to be drawn from it. And of course, God isn't going to interfere in a way that removes free will from humans and you know, removes all suffering and because that goes contrary to who God is as well. So, but that goes back to the fact that, I mean, our bodies matter, you know, and so even what happens to our bodies matter, not just, again, like suffering is just something I have to endure to get to the end, but there's meaning there as well. I have one more quote, and this one is quite a bit more lighthearted. So this is and now I'm going to blank on which movie, episode 5 or 6, but he says, you know, when 900 years you reach, look as good you will not.
You will not.
So,
which is absolutely true.
Yeah, when I'm 900, I'm going to be a skeleton somewhere and awaiting the resurrection of the body. So that one's just a fun kind of comical. He's got a good, at least a good deprecating. Sense of humor. Any other lessons or quotes from you guys that you wanted to bring up?
I've got one more, and still going back to episode 5, when Luke is faced with that dark spot of the Force, and he asks what he's going to find inside, and Yoda responds to him, "You'll only find what you bring in." Right, and that to me is such a great. As I'm increasing my own meditative practice, and really sitting down and focusing on my meditation, and I'm also teaching my 13-year-old how to do it, because he's got a lot of really knee-jerk emotional responses that are getting him into a lot of trouble. And so, you know, I'm trying to teach him how to, you know, kind of remove himself from those emotional responses to situations. That's been such a helpful quote, sitting down and remembering that when I go into meditation, when I go into prayer, I'm going to find what I bring with me. And it's important to remember that I'm bringing that baggage with me into those situations. And then it's also important to remember that I need to confront those things, not just that they're going to go in with me and come out with me and going to be with me constantly, but that when I'm going into those moments, that I'm reflecting on those things and coming to terms with them by pushing them outside of myself and looking at them. And that's the real power of, you know, sitting down and bringing something before God and just having it be that moment where you can recognize it. And, you know, Father, like you were saying earlier about, you know, naming the thing that we're confronting, you bring that thing with you. It's not like it's a thing that's external to you and you're just dealing with life and life is horrible, but that you have inside of you that thing that you're struggling with, and to remember that as you go into it. And sometimes it's ugly. Sometimes it's difficult to deal with. And many times it's very challenging to deal with it. But when we get into the confrontation with it, we realize it's us. That's the real thing that we're struggling with. And like Luke, when he arrives, he fights Vader in this dark place. And when he succeeds, Vader's helmet falls on the ground. And instead of being someone he doesn't know, it's his face that he finds, which is not only telling us something about the future of the episodes of Star Wars, but also something about Luke himself.
I also just like that whole idea that, I mean, so he grabs his lightsaber and heads into the cave, and Yoda tries to tell him not to bring his weapon, you know, and so that's part of the reason why he fails, quote unquote, in the cave. But I think that image, if you want to kind of apply it to just Christian meditation, I think is actually really interesting. And I'm totally just kind of speaking off the cuff, so I apologize if there's a faulty analogy here. But in terms of meditation, you want to bring into it yourself, only what you take with you. But if we take, quote unquote, the weapons of a smartphone, or something to try to combat what we're going to find in meditation and not actually deal with it, we're going to fail. So if you go into meditation, and it doesn't have to be a smartphone, but it could just be, I'm going to go into meditation and look at the stained glass windows and not actually engage with myself. It could be any number of things. But so it points out the necessity to, like, Christian meditation, sitting with the Lord and really just being with ourselves and with the Lord is challenging. And yet that's where we need to go, and to kind of try our best to remove all the distractions. Not that we're going to be perfect in that, but to really engage into that process. Okay, I guess we'll move on to favorite moments. What are your favorite moments with Yoda?
Oh man, I'll start off. The end of episode 2 is, because I grew up with these I had toys of Star Wars stuff before I had even seen the movies. So I had the Rancor and the Luke, because my parents got them at a garage sale and were like, oh yeah, you like action figures, you got all these He-Man guys, and this is, I guess, one of those. And so they handed them to me, and so when I started watching the movies and seeing these action figures that I had like on the movie screen, so I went backwards, kind of in the Star Wars thing. When I started watching the movies, I was like, oh, that's so cool. But you see Yoda, it's like he is supposed to be this great warrior, and he's always like walking around with this cane, and it's like, okay, I guess he's like this great warrior from a long time ago, whatever. And so then episode 2 comes out, and it's kind of pushing the boundaries of Yoda, who he is, and all of a sudden he shows up with Dooku, and they get into this confrontation, and you're like, oh, wait a minute, oh, is this happening? Is this actually going to happen? And I'm so torn up, because I'm disappointed in the fact that he's like, we won't solve this with our mastery of the Force, and then pulls out a lightsaber, and it's like, no, man. But at the same time, I was like, but we get to watch Yoda use a lightsaber, so that's cool too.
I love how he has his cane and he just drops his cane and goes into fight mode.
Just like, boom.
Yeah. And then afterwards he just uses the Force to pick up his cane again, and he's right.
Yeah, it's almost like he embraces the Force so fully in that moment that that the Force carries him instead of him being able to, because obviously he can't do all that stuff if he's still limping around with a cane. And
to point out that was starting to push CGI in places that they hadn't gone before, because that was the first time that Yoda was CGI. They ended up going back and redoing episode 1 and with a CGI Yoda, but episode 1, when it initially released, it was a puppet. So that was cool to see CGI in that way. Angela?
My favorite moment is actually from episode 8. And it's when Yoda comes and talks to Luke, and and I for one thing, I think it just delighted everyone in the theater, to see that moment, and it just gave everyone that sense again of like childlike awe and, oh my gosh, it's Yoda, and he, and it brought back some of the great qualities about Yoda, which is like the little noises that he makes and the little laugh that he has, and his kind of wicked sense of humor, like bringing the lightning down on the tree, and kind of teasing Luke, but really, again, going back to that lesson that I brought up at the beginning is, he gets after Luke about not still looking to the horizon and not what is in front of his nose. And I really need to hear that lesson a lot personally. So for me, that was just such a beautiful moment, and something that I think about personally in my life, as I'm going through my life, and just thinking about Yoda telling that to Luke, I apply it to myself.
Awesome. So I appreciate that you had a more deeper, insightful favorite moment of Yoda, because my first thing when I put down for favorite moment was the end of episode 2.
Mm-hmm.
And for my second, and I'll go with my second favorite because you took the first favorite, is his battle with Darth Sidious. So like I think maybe that's just the boy in me, is to to see an awesome lightsaber battle, and even in episode 3 to see Darth Sidious throwing the Senate chamber pods at Yoda as they're fighting and everything. Of course he doesn't exactly win that battle either, but still just a really fun battle. So that's my second favorite Yoda moment. Any final observations about Yoda that either of you would want to bring up?
I really am honestly looking forward to some people exploring him and confronting the sacred cow kind of situation that he can be, because I think you can place him into this slot in Star Wars of being the ultimate master, right? And the truth of the matter is that every single Jedi had a different thing that they were very focused on. And I think Qui-Gon gets a bad rap for just kind of being so shortly part of the first one, until you listen to Dave Filoni talk about Qui-Gon and how he knew that there was problems with the Jedi and he was trying to help fix those problems with the Jedi, right? But each and every one of them is very unique in their exploration of the Force. And a lot of ways it reminds me of, like thinking about the saints, because there really is no difference in God. God is God, right? And Christianity is Christianity. But to listen to St. Augustine versus St. Francis talk about their religion, this is two completely different perspectives. Like it's very, very unique. It's such a multifaceted thing to listen to the different saints speak about it. And if you can kind of embrace that, and none of them are perfect, right? They all have a checkered past, and they all got these strange things, flaws that are building into who they are and why they think the way they do. And I think if we can really, if the people who are really embracing, moving forward, especially with the High Republic stuff, if they can really take Yoda and tease out those things that make him the character that he is, and give us a little more story about him, I'm really looking forward to seeing more of that.
I'm nervous that they're not going to do that, because, well, at least initially, and maybe they've got plans more down the road, which I would be totally fine with. But initially, he's there, but he's not the focus, and I think it's to really, present these new characters and the new stories, and to not try to tie it too much to the Star Wars main characters that we know. But I know he's going to show up in, I think, one of the comics. He's kind of been referenced a couple times in the novels that I've read, but so we'll see. I mean, the High Republic is sort of it's years long in their storytelling plan, so there's tons that we still don't even know about what's coming. So
yeah, and I think I'm hoping the Mandalorian even does a little bit to kind of explore the depths of what the race is and what they're about, in that kind of coming back to who Yoda is.
Okay, well, listeners, of course, we want to hear your thoughts about Yoda too, because there's no way that we could talk about everything involving any of these characters. So we would love to keep the conversation going with you on your thoughts and opinions on Yoda and any of the characters that we have talked about and will continue to talk about in the future. So definitely please let us know what your thoughts are. You can do that in various ways. You can email us at starwars@sqpn.com, or you can comment on our Facebook page at facebook.com/starquestmedia. And you can use Twitter to tweet at us at SQPN, and definitely keep the conversation going there. And we'd love to engage with you guys in that way. We'd also like to take a moment now to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create the Secrets of Star Wars, including Matthew B., Saline L., Amy Z., CM, and Elaine K. And now is a great time to become a StarQuest patron. Thanks to a generous gift from a StarQuest supporter, when you start a new Patreon monthly pledge at sqpn.com, The first 3 months will be matched by an equal amount from our donor. So if you become a new patron at $10 per month, after 3 months, our donors will give $30 to Starquest to support all of our shows, including this one, making your gift go even further. So if you've been thinking about becoming a Starquest patron at any point, now is a great time to join. So visit sqpn.com/give today. Also, of course, make sure that you are subscribed to the show. You can subscribe to the show in Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, your favorite podcast player. You can also find us on the SQPN YouTube channel. Just be sure to click the bell to receive notifications for new episodes. And you can find any and all previous episodes of The Secrets of Star Wars by going to sqpn.com/Star Wars. And we will be back in 2 weeks to continue our character series by taking a look into the smooth talker Lando Calrissian. So, until then, Angela Cialana, thank you for joining me and sharing the secrets of Star Wars.
My pleasure.
And Thomas Sanjurjo, thank you for joining us this evening as well.
It's been great. Thank you.
And once again, I'm Father Andrew Kinstetter. Thank you for listening to the Secrets of Star Wars on Starquest.